The spaceport was alive with noise. People rushed past, talking loudly, dragging their bags, and rushing to catch their flights. Ships came and went, their engines roaring, filling the air with a low hum. Bright lights flashed on the walls, and screens showed news and advertisements. Yet, in the middle of all this chaos, sat a man who seemed almost invisible. His name was John Harris. Once, he was a hero, a soldier who had fought in battles far from Earth, in wars that no one talked about anymore. Now, he was just a tired, old man with scars that told stories no one cared to hear. His clothes were worn, and his eyes held a sadness deeper than the empty cafe chair he sat on. He stared at the small cup of coffee in front of him, his hands shaking slightly. Around him, people came and went, but no one stopped to look at John. Some even sneered when they caught sight of the scars on his arms and neck. To them, he was just a broken man, a forgotten veteran who had seen too much and had nothing left to give. Children pointed at him, and adults whispered behind their hands. The world had moved on, leaving him behind. John's mind drifted back to those days filled with danger and glory. He remembered the battles fought in deep space, the alien enemies who wanted to destroy humanity, and the brothers and sisters in arms who had stood by his side. They had risked everything to protect the people on Earth. But now, those people looked away when they saw the scars. They did not understand what those marks meant. Suddenly, the door to the cafe opened, and 6 men stepped inside. They moved quietly but with confidence. Their clothes were simple, but their presence was powerful. No one spoke as they entered. They sat down at a table near John and watched him closely. There was something about these men, something different. They did not laugh or whisper. They only stared. John noticed them, but said nothing. He felt a strange comfort in their silence. It was as if they understood him without needing words. The 6 men were Silent Seal's elite soldiers, trained to move without being seen or heard. They had come for John because they knew his story and his value. Outside the cafe, the world went on, busy and loud. But inside, time seemed to slow. The Silent Seals stayed close to John, their eyes alert, watching the room carefully. Something was coming, and they were ready. A group of young men entered the cafe, loud and full of energy. They saw John sitting there and started to laugh. One of them pointed at John's scars and said, "Look at that old guy. What's he done? Huh? Fight with a knife or something?" His friends joined in, mocking and making jokes. The other customers smiled awkwardly but did not stop them. John looked down, pain flashing in his eyes. He wanted to stand up and say something, to defend himself, but the words caught in his throat. The scars on his skin told a story of battles and survival, but no one wanted to listen. The laughter grew louder then. Without a word, one of the Silent Seals stood up. He moved slowly but with purpose. The young men stopped laughing and looked at him. The seal said nothing, but his presence was enough. The cafe fell silent. The young men's faces turned serious, and their smiles disappeared. The seal walked over to John's table and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. John looked up, surprised but grateful. The others followed the first seal's lead and stood around John, forming a quiet shield. The message was clear: no one would harm this veteran. The young men backed away, embarrassed and unsure what to do next. They mumbled and left the cafe without another word. The customers started to whisper again, but this time with respect, not mockery. John took a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, he felt protected. He looked at the 6 Silent Seals and nodded. They had come for him for a reason. One of the seals finally spoke, his voice low but clear. "John Harris, you're not forgotten. We know who you are, and we need your help." John's heart raced. Help? After all these years? He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he also knew this was a chance to be part of something important again. Leader of the Seals handed John a small device. "There's a threat coming. Something bigger than anything we've faced before. We need your experience." John looked at the device, then at the 6 men standing silently around him. The past was catching up, but this time, he would not face it alone. Outside, the world continued without pause. But inside the cafe, a new story was beginning, the story of a forgotten veteran who would rise again. Helped by 6 silent guardians, John took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "Tell me everything." After the cafe incident, John felt a mix of hope and confusion. The 6 men who had defended him did not speak much, but their presence was strong and steady. They led him quietly to a secure room not far from the spaceport. The walls were cold metal, lit by soft blue lights. It was safe, far from the noisy crowd and judgmental eyes. John looked at the 6 men closely. Each wore simple clothes but carried the weight of years of training. Their faces were calm and serious, their eyes sharp like hunters. These were the Silent Seals soldiers who worked in the shadows. They spoke little, but when they did, their words were powerful. The leader of the group, a tall man named Marcus, finally broke the silence. His voice was calm but firm. "John, we're here because you are important. The scars you carry are not just memories, they are proof of battles we all fought. But a new threat has appeared. One that wants to destroy everything we protected." John listened carefully. He had heard rumors of alien groups moving in secret, attacking veterans, and stealing secrets. but he never thought it would come so close. The seals told him that the enemy was searching for something. John knew something dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. For hours, they shared stories in low voices. The seals explained how they had been watching John, waiting for the right time to approach. They had trained for silent strikes and deep missions. Their skill was unmatched, and their loyalty was to the few they trusted. Now, that trust was with John. Despite his doubts, John felt a strange calm. The silent seals were more than just soldiers. They were brothers who understood pain and sacrifice without needing to speak it. Together, they began to plan. The enemy was close, and time was running out. Suddenly, alarms blared through the room. Red lights flashed. The seals moved quickly, silent and precise. John's heart raced. The threat was real and near. As the team prepared to move, Marcus gave a final look to John. "Stay close. We fight as one." John nodded. For the first time in years, he was not alone. The silent guardians were by his side, and together they would face whatever was coming. The first light of dawn barely touched the city when the silent seals and John prepared for what was coming. The quiet, safe room they had taken refuge in was now filled with tension. Every second felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. Outside, shadows moved near the spaceport's edge unseen, enemies creeping closer. John's scars itched, a sharp reminder of battles past. But this time, the fight was not far away. It was here, waiting. But, suddenly, the sharp crack of energy weapons filled the air. Explosions rocked the outer walls of the spaceport. The enemy had come without warning, and they were ruthless. John and the 6 seals moved with practiced speed and silence, slipping through shadows to face the attackers. The aliens were different from anything John had faced before, fast, strong, and using weapons that hummed with strange power. The battle was fierce and quick, leaving no room for hesitation. John fought with the skill of a veteran, every move precise and deadly. The seals protected John, forming a silent circle as they pushed back the enemy. Their training in stealth and close combat was unmatched. Despite being outnumbered, they fought with calm and strength, each blow landing like thunder. The sky above was brightening as the sun rose, casting long shadows over the battlefield. The fight was brutal, but the silent warriors refused to back down. John felt the fire of old courage burning in his chest again. As the last alien was pushed back into the dark corners of the spaceport, the team took a moment to catch their breath, but the danger was far from over. John knew this was only the beginning. The enemy wanted something from him, something they would stop at nothing to get. The silent seals gathered around him, their eyes sharp and ready. "We need to find out who sent them," Marcus said quietly. John nodded, his scars burning with pain but his spirit stronger than ever. The war had started, and this time he was not fighting alone. After the fierce attack at dawn, John and the 6 silent seals found a hidden safe house on the edge of the city. The room was quiet but filled with urgency. John's body ached from the fight, and his scars burned as fresh memories of pain. The team gathered around a small holographic map glowing softly in the center of the table. Marcus, the leader, pointed to a distant star system. "This is where the real danger lies," he said quietly. "You were sent on a mission there." John, a mission that was never finished. John's heart pounded. He remembered that mission all too well. It had been deep in enemy space, a secret operation meant to stop a powerful alien weapon, but something went wrong. John and his team had been betrayed by someone they trusted. The truth was hidden, even from John himself. Now, after years of silence, the mission's secrets were coming back, threatening not just John but the whole Earth. The 6 silent seals looked at John with steady eyes. They had been chosen to protect him because they knew the weight he carried. "We need to finish what was started," Marcus said. "The enemy wants that weapon's power. If they get it, no one on Earth will be safe." John's fingers trembled as he touched the scars on his arm. Each one told a story of battles and pain, but also of survival and strength. He knew this mission was his last chance to make things right. As the team prepared to leave, a quiet determination filled the room. The silent seals checked their gear with precision, their faces set like stone. John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on him. He was no longer a forgotten veteran. He was a soldier on a mission that could change the future of humanity. Together, they would face the dangers ahead, no matter what waited in the darkness of space. The ship hummed quietly as it glided through the vast emptiness of space. Inside the small command room, John Harris sat with the 6 silent seals, all of them focused on the glowing holographic map before them. The distant stars outside the window were cold and distant, but the tension in the room was thick, heavy with worry and doubt. John could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him. The secret weapon they sought was dangerous enough, but what scared him more was the possibility that the real threat might not only be from the alien enemies outside. No, the threat could be closer within their own ranks. The team had been traveling together for days, moving through space and staying alert. But strange things had started to happen. Supplies went missing, communications were jammed at key moments. Small mistakes, things that could mean nothing or everything. Marcus, the leader of the Silent Seals, noticed these signs and warned the team to be careful. "Trust is our greatest weapon," he said quietly. but if it breaks, everything falls apart. John looked around at the faces of the men and women beside him. They had fought together before, and they all carried scars, not just on their bodies, but in their hearts. Yet even among this tight group, suspicion had begun to creep in. The silence between them sometimes felt heavier than the words left unsaid. They all knew that if a traitor was among them, it could mean the end of their mission and the end of Earth's hope. That night, as the ship moved silently through the dark, John lay awake in his small bunk, staring at the ceiling. Memories of past battles mixed with the present fear. He had been betrayed once before, and the pain of that betrayal still burned inside him. He wondered who among them could be the enemy in disguise. Was it one of the SEALs who had protected him, or someone else hidden in the shadows? The next morning, the team gathered for a routine check of their equipment. As they worked, a message came through the secure channel. It was short, urgent, and strange, a warning that someone on the ship could not be trusted. The words sent a chill through the room. Everyone stopped and looked at each other, eyes searching for answers. Marcus raised his voice, calm but firm. We must find the truth before it's too late. No one leaves this room without explanation. The team nodded, but the tension did not ease. Instead, it grew thicker, like a storm waiting to break. John volunteered to help investigate. He knew that the past had made him cautious, and his instincts were sharp. Together with two of the silent SEALs, he began to look for clues. They checked the ship's logs, communications, and supplies. Everything was carefully hidden, but nothing was impossible to find. Hours passed with no clear answers. Then, a small piece of evidence surfaced, a set of strange signals coming from one of the ship's compartments. When they opened the door, they found a hidden device, used to send messages to an unknown enemy. The shock was like a punch to the stomach. Someone on their own team was betraying them. The discovery sparked fear and anger. The team gathered again, the silent SEALs standing guard as John spoke. We have a traitor, he said slowly. Someone who wants this mission to fail. We must find who it is, before it's too late. No one spoke for a moment. Then questions flew fast. Who could it be? How did they hide it so well? And why? The team began to watch each other closely. The silent bonds they had built now cracked by doubt. Days passed, and the search continued. John felt the weight of leadership pressing on him like never before. Every move they made was careful, every word measured. Trust was fragile, but the mission was still their only hope. They could not afford to fail. One night, as John worked late, he overheard a conversation through a hidden comlink. Two voices whispered secrets about the weapon, about plans to hand it over to the enemy. His heart sank as he recognized one of the voices, a voice he thought was loyal. John did not act immediately. He needed proof. He waited and watched, knowing that one wrong step could end everything. The silent SEALs supported him silently, sharing the burden without words. Finally, the moment came. During a routine check, John caught the traitor red-handed, attempting to sabotage the ship's engines. The shock was complete. The betrayal was deeper than anyone imagined. The traitor was someone close. Someone trusted. Marcus, and the silent SEALs quickly restrained the traitor, their movements silent but strong. John looked at the face of the person who had broken their trust and felt a mix of sadness and anger. The mission was in danger, but the truth was out. With the traitor exposed, the team felt a new strength. The shadow of doubt began to lift, replaced by renewed focus. They knew the final battle was near, and now, with the enemy's spy caught, they could prepare without fear of betrayal. John's scars ached, but his spirit was stronger than ever. He had faced enemies both outside and within. The silent SEALs stood with him, ready to finish what they started. The war was far from over, but together, they would face whatever came next. The team left the ship's cramped command room and stepped into the bright light of the space station's main deck. The air was filled with the hum of engines and the distant chatter of crew members. But the veterans Joan and the 6 silent SEALs felt only tension. The alien threat they had been warned about was no longer a secret. It was real, and it was growing closer every day. John's eyes scanned the glowing screens, displaying images from distant planets. Alien ships, unlike anything Earth had seen before, moved steadily through space. Their designs were sharp, almost organic, and their weapons pulsed with strange energy. The silent SEALs stood silently behind John, their faces calm but alert. They knew this enemy was more than just a military threat. It was a force that could change everything. A message came through on the secure channel. It was from the intelligence division. Alien forces are preparing to strike at multiple locations, the voice warned. They seek a powerful weapon connected to the veteran John Harris. The entire fleet is on high alert. The room grew colder as the team absorbed the news. John touched the scars on his arms, feeling the familiar sting. He understood better than anyone what was at stake. The aliens were not just after him, they wanted the secret he carried. The silent SEALs nodded in agreement. They had trained for years to protect Earth from threats like this. But this time, the enemy was unlike any they had faced. Marcus stepped forward. We need to move fast, he said. The weapon must not fall into their hands. We will strike, first, before they do. The team began to prepare, gathering weapons, armor, and supplies. Every moment counted. The alien threat was no longer distant, it was at their doorstep. As the team geared up, John felt a new fire inside him. His scars, once marks of pain and loss, now felt like armor. He was ready to fight not just for himself, but for every person who believed in a future free from fear. The Silent Seals moved with precision, their training perfect. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. The battle ahead would be the hardest of their lives. But John and his silent guardians knew one thing: Earth would not fall without a fight. The stars outside the ship's window shone cold and distant, but inside the cabin, the air was thick with urgency. John Harris and the 6 Silent Seals prepared for their next move. The weapon they sought, the one powerful enough to stop the alien threat, was hidden on a planet far from Earth, in a system no one dared to visit. Time was running out. The enemy was closing in fast, and every second counted. John paced slowly across the room, the scars on his arms itching as if warning him of the dangers ahead. He stopped by the holographic map glowing softly in the center of the table. The planet was marked clearly, a red dot on a sea of black. It was called Volternine, a hostile world known for its deadly storms and dangerous creatures. No one who had gone there before had ever returned. Marcus, the leader of the Silent Seals, stepped forward. His face was calm but serious. "Volternine is our only hope," he said. "The weapon is there, but it's guarded by more than just nature. Alien forces protect it with traps and soldiers. We have to be careful." John nodded, feeling the weight of the mission settle deeper in his chest. "We don't have a choice," he said. "If they get the weapon first, Earth is lost." The team worked quickly to prepare their gear, loading weapons and checking systems. Their movements were quiet but urgent, like a dance practiced many times before. As the ship moved toward Volternine, the tension grew heavier. The Silent Seals communicated mostly with hand signals and brief nods. Their training had taught them to speak only when necessary. John watched them closely, admiring their skill and discipline. He felt a surge of respect for these men who protected him without question. Landing on Volternine was a shock. The planet's sky was dark with swirling black clouds, lightning flashing like angry eyes. The ground was rough and broken, covered in sharp rocks and strange plants that seemed to move in the wind. The air smelled strange, sharp, and cold. The team moved carefully, knowing that every step could be their last. John's heart beat faster. With every step, his scars burned, reminding him of the battles behind and the fight ahead. The Silent Seals stayed close, moving like shadows in the dark. They set up a small base camp near a rocky ridge and began their search for the weapon. The map showed it deep inside a cavern system nearby, but the path was dangerous. The team faced many threats: deadly creatures lurking in the shadows, strange traps that tested their skills, and the constant threat of enemy patrols. Each obstacle forced them to rely on each other's strengths. John led with quiet confidence, his experience guiding the team through the alien dangers. The Silent Seals communicated without words, their trust in each other unshakable. One night, as they rested in the dark cave, John spoke softly. "This mission isn't just about fighting," he said. "It's about trust. We must believe in each other to survive." The others nodded, understanding the truth in his words. They had faced danger together, but this mission was testing more than their strength, it was testing their unity. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by a distant noise, sharp and mechanical. The enemy was near. The team moved quickly, weapons ready. Shadows shifted in the distance, and the battle for the weapon began. John fought with all his skill, each strike filled with purpose. The Silent Seals fought like ghosts, striking from the shadows and disappearing before the enemy could react. The fight was long and brutal. The team pushed forward, refusing to give up. Finally, they reached the inner chamber of the cavern. There, glowing softly in the dark, was the weapon, a strange device pulsing with energy. John approached it carefully, feeling the power it held. He knew this was the key to stopping the alien threat. But the battle was not over. Enemy forces surged again, desperate to stop them. The team fought back fiercely, defending the weapon with everything they had. John's scars burned with pain and determination. This was more than a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future. When the last enemy fell, the team took a moment to catch their breath. The weapon was safe, but they knew the war was far from over. As they prepared to leave John looked at the Silent Seals and felt a deep sense of trust and hope. Together, they had raced against time and they had won. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, sliding slowly into orbit around the dark, forbidding planet known as Volternine. From above, the world looked like a swirling mass of storms and shadow. Lightning danced behind thick black clouds, and vast oceans of acid glowed faintly beneath the roiling atmosphere. The veteran John Harris and the 6 Silent Seals stared at the view in silence. The planet was a harsh, dangerous place, one no one visited willingly. John's scars itched with a familiar warning, and he felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. They had come here to find the secret weapon, the last hope to save Earth from the alien threat. But Volternine was more than just dangerous weather and strange creatures. It held traps, alien patrols, and old secrets that could kill them all. Marcus, the leader of the Silent Seals, broke the silence. "This planet is a fortress," he said. "Our mission will be tough. We will have no room for mistakes. We move carefully, stay quiet, and trust no one." His voice was steady, but the tension was clear. John nodded, feeling the weight of the mission settle heavy on his shoulders. This was more than a mission. It was a test of survival, courage, and trust. The team prepared for landing. Their suits locked tightly, and weapons were checked again and again. The ship's engines rumbled as it descended through the thick clouds. Outside, the storm howled, buffeting the ship with violent winds. The landing was rough, shaking the ship violently as it touched down on rocky ground. When the hatch opened, the team stepped into the dark world of Volternine. The air was thick and bitter, filled with the smell of sulfur and something else, something alien. Strange plants with glowing tendrils moved in the shadows, and the ground beneath their feet was uneven and sharp. John took a deep breath and felt the familiar sting of the planet's toxic atmosphere through his mask. The silent seals moved, quickly, forming a tight group around John. Their training showed in every step. Quiet, precise, alert. They communicated with hand signals, eyes scanning the darkness. The team set up a temporary base near the landing site, using equipment that created a small bubble of safety in the hostile environment. John's mind raced. The weapon was deep inside the planet, hidden in a cavern that was said to be impossible to reach, but they had no choice. Earth depended on it. The scars on John's arms burned, a reminder of every battle and every sacrifice. The journey inward was slow and dangerous. The team faced traps set by the alien defenders' laser grids, hidden mines, and automated sentries. Each obstacle tested their skill and teamwork. The silent seals moved like shadows, disabling traps with expert precision. John led the way, using his experience to avoid dangers that were invisible to others. One night, as they rested in a narrow cave, John spoke softly. "This planet wants to kill us," he said, "but it doesn't know who it's fighting. We are the last hope." The others nodded, their faces set with determination. The silent seals never spoke much, but their eyes said everything. As they moved deeper, they encountered strange creatures, large insect-like beasts with glowing eyes and sharp claws. The team fought with a mix of weapons and strategy, taking down the creatures without noise to avoid alerting enemy patrols. The battle was tense and brutal, but the veterans survived. Finally, they reached the entrance to the cavern where the weapon was said to be hidden. The door was massive, made of an alien metal that pulsed with energy. John's heart pounded. This was the moment they had been preparing for. But as they approached, alarms suddenly blared throughout the cavern. Alien soldiers appeared, rushing forward with weapons raised. The silent seals took their positions, their faces calm but ready. The battle for the weapon had begun. John fought with everything he had, his scars burning with pain and courage. The silent seals moved like ghosts, striking quickly and disappearing before the enemy could react. The cavern echoed with the sound of battle blasts of energy, shouts, and the clash of weapons. The fight was long and fierce. The team pushed forward, refusing to give up. When the last enemy fell, the team was battered but victorious. The weapon was theirs. John approached the glowing device carefully. It pulsed with strange energy, humming softly in the dark. He reached out and felt a surge of power flow through him. The weapon was more than a tool, it was a promise of hope. But the victory was bittersweet. The team knew the war was not over. The alien threat was still out there, and Earth's future depended on what came next. As they prepared to leave the forbidden planet, John looked at the silent seals and felt a deep bond. Together, they had faced impossible dangers and survived. Together, they would protect the weapon and the hope of humanity. The team returned to the ship with the alien weapon secured. The journey back to Earth was long and quiet, but tension filled the air. John Harris and the 6 silent seals were exhausted, yet their minds raced. They knew the war was far from over. The weapon was powerful, but so were their enemies then now. The worst threat was something closer than any of them expected. John sat alone in the dimly lit command room, staring at the blinking lights on the console. The scars on his arms itched fiercely, a warning he had learned to trust. Something was wrong. He had felt it since the moment they left the forbidden planet. The silent seals had been quiet, more so than usual. Their eyes held a deeper worry. Suddenly, a loud alarm shattered the silence, red lights flashed, and the ship's control panels beeped urgently. The voice of Marcus, the SEAL leader, came over the intercom, calm but firm. "Security breach in the cargo hold. All teams, prepare for immediate action." John's heart pounded. The weapon was stored in the cargo hold. If anyone tried to steal or damage it, the consequences would be catastrophic. He rushed from the command room, his steps echoing down the narrow corridors. When he reached the cargo hold, the sight shocked him. One of the ship's trusted engineers lay unconscious on the floor, and strange equipment was scattered across the room. The containment unit holding the weapon showed signs of tampering. This was no accident. Marcus and the silent seals were already there, securing the area and checking the engineer. The tension was thick. John looked into the eyes of his comrades, searching for answers. Then, a chilling thought struck him. The betrayal was not over. There was still a traitor aboard. the team began questioning the crew. Everyone denied involvement, but John knew better. He had learned long ago that betrayal often wore a friendly face. The scars on his body told stories of trust broken and alliances shattered. As the investigation deepened, small clues appeared. Misplaced tool, a hidden message, a secret communication. The team worked silently but quickly, piecing together the puzzle. Their training had prepared them for this moment. One night, John caught a flicker of movement in the shadows near the communications room. He followed quietly, signaling the silent seals to cover him. There, he overheard a hushed conversation, plans to sell the weapons secrets to the alien enemy. The voice was unmistakable. It belonged to one of the senior officers aboard the ship. John felt a surge of anger and sadness. The betrayal was deeper than he had feared. Someone they had trusted, someone who had sworn to protect Earth, was working with the enemy. The stakes had grown higher, and the mission more dangerous. He quickly returned to Marcus and the Silent Seals. Together, they planned a careful trap to catch the traitor red-handed. The team worked in silence, their trust in each other the only thing keeping them strong. The day of the trap arrived. The ship was tense. Every shadow watched, every sound noted. John stood ready, his scars burning with pain and determination. The Silent Seals moved quietly, surrounding the suspect without making a sound. When the traitor entered the communications room to send a secret message, the team struck. In seconds, the room was secured. The traitor was caught, shocked and defeated. John looked at the person who had betrayed them and felt a bitter mix of emotions. The war was not just against aliens, but against those who would sell out humanity. For power. With the traitor in custody, the team felt renewed strength. The weapon was safe for no end. The bond between John and the Silent Seals had never been stronger. But John knew this was only one battle in a larger war. The enemy was patient, clever, and ruthless. The scars on his body reminded him that the fight would not be easy. As the ship moved closer to Earth, John stood with the Silent Seals, ready to face whatever came next. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together. The ship's engines hummed steadily as it sailed through the cold emptiness of space. John Harris stood at the observation window, his eyes fixed on the distant blue dot that was Earth. The scars on his arms seemed to pulse with the same rhythm. As the ship's engine steady, persistent, and full of unspoken strength, the mission was almost over, but the final battle still awaited them. Inside the command room, the 6 Silent Seals prepared their gear carefully. Each of them moved with quiet precision. Their faces were serious, showing the weight of what was to come. The weapon they carried was unlike anything Earth had seen before, an alien device of unimaginable power. It was their last hope to stop the alien forces that threatened to destroy humanity. John joined them, his steps slow but determined. The memories of past battles flashed through his mind, friends lost, sacrifices made, and the pain of scars earned. And now, the weapon was in their hands, and the future depended on how they used it. Marcus, the leader of the Silent Seals, spoke softly. "We're approaching the enemy's main fleet. This is the final fight. We must protect the weapon, at all costs." The team nodded. They had trained for years for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare them for the battle ahead. As the ship moved closer to the enemy fleet, alarms suddenly blared. The main screen flickered, showing dozens of alien warships emerging from the darkness. Their weapons glowed like stars, ready to strike. The enemy was waiting. John felt his heart race. The scars on his body burned with pain and courage. He knew the stakes were higher than ever. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of all humankind. The battle began with a roar. Energy blasts lit up the void, and ships darted between blasts like ghosts. The Silent Seals moved swiftly, ready to board enemy vessels and sabotage their weapons. John stayed on the command ship, coordinating the defense and preparing the weapon. The weapon's power was incredible. It pulsed with energy, and John could feel it humming beneath his hands. But it was also dangerous if used carelessly. It could destroy everything. The team had to be careful. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. An enemy missile hit the hull, sending sparks flying. The lights flickered, and the crew scrambled to fix the damage. John grabbed his weapon and joined the Silent Seals, preparing to defend their ship. As they fought off boarding enemies, John's mind raced. The weapon had to be activated, but the code was hidden deep inside his memories. The scars on his skin held the key, a secret written in pain and sacrifice. He focused, remembering the training, the battles, and the final message left by his fallen comrades. The Silent Seals moved like shadows through the corridors, taking down enemies without making a sound. Their trust in John was absolute. Together, they reached the control room. Fighting through the last waves of attackers, John reached out and touched the weapon's control panel. The pain in his scars flared, but he ignored it. With a deep breath, he entered the code stored in his mind. The weapon hummed louder, and a bright light filled the room. Outside, the enemy ships froze, their weapons shutting down one by one. A powerful energy wave spread from the ship, disabling the alien fleet. The battle was won. The team gathered, exhausted but victorious. John looked at the Silent Seals, their faces showing relief and pride. The scars on his arms were a reminder of the price they had paid, but also of their strength. The war was over. Earth was safe. But John knew this was not the end. The universe was full of dangers, and humanity's fight for survival would continue. Yet, for now, they had won. And together, they would face whatever came next. The battle was over. The enemy fleet lay disabled, drifting silently in space. The ship carrying John Harris and the 6 silent seals hovered over Earth's atmosphere, tired but triumphant. The hum of engines was softer now, almost peaceful, as if the ship itself was catching its breath after the fierce fight. John stood at the observation window once more, looking down at the blue and green planet below. Earth looked fragile from this distance, a beautiful world worth every scar and sacrifice. His hands rested on the cold glass, and his thoughts wandered to the people waiting below who did not know the price paid to keep their homes safe. The silent seals gathered behind him, their faces tired but proud. Though they rarely spoke, their quiet presence was a comfort. They were his brothers in arms, guardians who understood the battles within and without, but the peace was fragile. John's body ached from old wounds, and his scars pulsed with a deepening pain, a reminder that the fight had changed him forever. The memories of war haunted his nights, and sometimes the silence was the loudest sound. Marcus, the leader of the silent seals, broke the quiet. "We saved Earth, but the cost is heavy," he said softly. "We must be ready. The galaxy is vast, and new dangers will come." His words hung in the air, a sober truth. John nodded, knowing Marcus was right. The victory was only one battle in a longer war. But for now, they had earned a moment to breathe. The ship docked at the Earth Command Station, where crowds of officials and soldiers waited to greet the heroes. The media buzzed with excitement, and John felt the sudden rush of attention. For the first time in years, he was not invisible. The scars that once caused whispers and stares were now marks of honor. Yet John felt a strange emptiness beneath the praise. The war had taken more than just his body, it had taken parts of his soul. The faces of fallen friends flashed in his mind, and the weight of survival pressed down hard. At a private ceremony, John was awarded the highest honor for bravery. The 6 silent seals stood silently beside him, their eyes reflecting the pride they felt. But even in that moment of glory, John's mind was elsewhere, on the battles yet to come. On the secret weapons still humming softly in the ship's hold, and on the scars that would never fully heal. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, John removed his jacket, revealing the scars that told his story. He traced the lines slowly, remembering each fight, each loss, and each moment of courage. The pain was a reminder, but also a promise that he would never forget, and would always be ready. Suddenly, his device beeped softly. A message flashed on the screen. It was a signal from deep space, unknown, urgent, and encrypted. Marcus appeared behind him, watching closely. John hesitated, then opened the message. The words sent a chill through the room. "New threat detected. Urgent mission required. Your scars hold the key." The veteran's eyes narrowed. The fight was not over. The galaxy still needed its protectors. Marcus placed a hand on John's shoulder. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. John looked out the window, feeling the weight of the past and the hope of the future. He nodded slowly. "I am." The silent seals gathered around, ready once more to face the unknown. The war had changed them all, but it had also awakened something stronger, a new purpose, a new fight, and a new hope. Together, they would face whatever darkness lay ahead. The silence of the command ship was different this time. It was no longer the tense quiet before a fight. Instead, it felt like the calm after a storm, of stillness filled with memories and hopes. John Harris stood at the observation window, gazing at the stars beyond, thinking about everything they had survived. The scars on his arms itched softly, a reminder of pain, but also of strength. The 6 silent seals moved quietly behind him, their presence steady and sure. They had fought countless battles together, seen horrors no one should face, and now they stood ready for whatever came next. They had been through darkness and pain, but they were brothers bound by trust, scars, and purpose. John turned away from the window and looked at his team. "We fought hard," he said softly. "We lost much, but we also saved hope. Earth is safe for now." Marcus nodded. "But the galaxy is still dangerous. We can't let our guard down. Our work has just begun." John felt the weight of those words. The battles had changed him, not just his body, but his heart and mind. He had seen the best and worst of humanity, the pain of betrayal, and the power of loyalty. The scars on his skin were stories of survival, but his soul carried deeper marks. As the ship approached Earth, a wave of emotions swept over John. He thought of the people who waited for heroes' families, friends, strangers who had no idea of the sacrifices made for their safety. He thought of the quiet nights filled with fear and the loud moments of battle. And he thought of the silent seals, who fought not for glory but for something greater. The ship landed gently at the Earth Command Station, greeted by cheers and applause. John and his team stepped onto solid ground, the sunlight warm on their faces. Reporters crowded around, eager to hear the story of the veteran and his silent guardians. But John looked past the noise, focusing on the future. "This is not the end," he said. "It's a new beginning. We must stay strong and united." Days passed, and John settled back into a world that seemed both familiar and strange. The scars on his arms sometimes burned with old memories, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him he was alive and ready. He spent time training new recruits, sharing lessons from the battlefield, and preparing the next generation to defend Earth. The Silent Seals remained close, their bond unbroken. They continued their work in shadows, guarding against threats. No one else saw it. John knew their fight was far from over, but he felt a deep sense of peace knowing they were ready. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of colors, John sat quietly, looking at a faded photograph of his old team. He smiled sadly, remembering those who had fallen and those who had survived. The scars told his story, but his heart told a greater one, a story of hope, courage, and unbreakable spirit. Suddenly, a message arrived on his COM device. It was from Marcus. New intelligence on an unknown threat. We need you. John took a deep breath and stood. The galaxy was vast, and the darkness was never far. But he was ready. He looked out the window at the stars once more. Let's go, he said quietly. The Silent Seals gathered around, their faces set with determination. Together, they stepped into the next chapter facing the unknown, carrying the scars of the past and the hope of the future. The war had changed them all, but it had also made them stronger. Together, they would protect Earth and the stars beyond. A new beginning had come, and they would meet it as one. The silence of the command ship was different this time. It was no longer the tense quiet before a fight. Instead, it felt like the calm after a storm, a stillness filled with memories and hopes. John Harris stood at the observation window, gazing at the stars beyond, thinking about everything they had survived. The scars on his arms itched softly, a reminder of pain, but also of strength. The 6 Silent Seals moved quietly behind him, their presence steady and sure. They had fought countless battles together, seen horrors no one should face, and now they stood ready for whatever came next. They had been through darkness and pain, but they were brothers bound by trust, scars, and purpose. John turned away from the window and looked at his team. We fought hard, he said softly. We lost much, but we also saved hope. Earth is safe for now, Marcus nodded. But the galaxy is still dangerous. We can't let our guard down. Our work has just begun. John felt the weight of those words. The battles had changed him, not just his body, but his heart and mind. He had seen the best and worst of humanity, the pain of betrayal, and the power of loyalty. The scars on his skin were stories of survival, but his soul carried deeper marks. The ship approached Earth. A wave of emotions swept over John. He thought of the people who waited for heroes' families, friends, strangers who had no idea of the sacrifices made for their safety. He thought of the quiet nights filled with fear, and the loud moments of battle, and he thought of the Silent Seals, who fought not for glory but for something greater. The ship landed gently at the Earth command station, greeted by cheers and applause. John and his team stepped onto solid ground, the sunlight warm on their faces. Reporters crowded around, eager to hear the story of the veteran and his silent guardians, but John looked past the noise, focusing on the future. This is not the end, he said. It's a new beginning. We must stay strong and united. Days passed, and John settled back into a world that seemed both familiar and strange. The scars on his arms sometimes burned with old memories, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him he was alive and ready. He spent time training new recruits, sharing lessons from the battlefield, and preparing the next generation to defend Earth. The Silent Seals remained close, their bond unbroken. They continued their work in shadows, guarding against threats. No one else saw it. John knew their fight was far from over, but he felt a deep sense of peace knowing they were ready. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of colors, John sat quietly, looking at a faded photograph of his old team. He smiled sadly, remembering those who had fallen and those who had survived. The scars told his story, but his heart told a greater one, a story of hope, courage, and unbreakable spirit. Suddenly, a message arrived on his COM device. It was from Marcus. New intelligence on an unknown threat. We need you. John took a deep breath and stood. The galaxy was vast, and the darkness was never far. But he was ready. He looked out the window at the stars once more. Let's go, he said quietly. The Silent Seals gathered around, their faces set with determination. Together, they stepped into the next chapter facing the unknown, carrying the scars of the past and the hope of the future. The war had changed them all, but it had also made them stronger. Together, they would protect Earth and the stars beyond. A new beginning had come, and they would meet it as one. The silence of the command ship was different this time. It was no longer the tense quiet before a fight. Instead, it felt like the calm after a storm, of stillness filled with memories and hopes. John Harris stood at the observation window, gazing at the stars beyond, thinking about everything they had survived. The scars on his arms itched softly, a reminder of pain, but also of strength. The 6 Silent Seals moved quietly behind him, their presence steady and sure. They had fought countless battles together, seen horrors no one should face, and now they stood ready for whatever came next. They had been through darkness and pain, but they were brothers bound by trust, scars, and purpose. John turned away from the window and looked at his team. We fought hard, he said softly. We lost much, but we also saved hope. Earth is safe for now. Marcus nodded. But the galaxy is still dangerous. We can't let our guard down. Our work has just begun. John felt the weight of those words. The battles had changed him, not just his body, but his heart and mind. He had seen the best and worst of humanity, the pain of betrayal, and the power of loyalty. The scars on his skin were stories of survival, but his soul carried deeper marks. As the ship approached Earth, a wave of emotions swept over John. He thought of the people who waited for heroes' families, friends, strangers who had no idea of the sacrifices made for their safety. He thought of the quiet nights filled with fear and the loud moments of battle. And he thought of the silent seals, who fought not for glory but for something greater. The ship landed gently at the Earth command station, greeted by cheers and applause. John and his team stepped onto solid ground, the sunlight warm on their faces. Reporters crowded around, eager to hear the story of the veteran and his silent guardians. But John looked past the noise, focusing on the future. This is not the end, he said. It's a new beginning. We must stay strong and united. Days passed, and John settled back into a world that seemed both familiar and strange. The scars on his arms sometimes burned with old memories, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him he was alive and ready. He spent time training new recruits, sharing lessons from the battlefield, and preparing the next generation to defend Earth. The silent seals remained close, their bond unbroken. They continued their work in shadows, guarding against threats no one else saw. John knew their fight was far from over, but he felt a deep sense of peace knowing they were ready. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of colors, John sat quietly, looking at a faded photograph of his old team. He smiled sadly, remembering those who had fallen and those who had survived. The scars told his story, but his heart told a greater one, a story of hope, courage, and unbreakable spirit. Suddenly, a message arrived on his device. It was from Marcus. New intelligence on an unknown threat. We need you. John took a deep breath and stood. The galaxy was vast, and the darkness was never far. But he was ready. He looked out the window at the stars once more. Let's go, he said quietly. The silent seals gathered around, their faces set with determination. Together, they stepped into the next chapter, facing the unknown, carrying the scars of the past and the hope of the future. The war had changed them all, but it had also made them stronger. Together, they would protect Earth and the stars beyond. A new beginning had come, and they would meet it as one. The silence of the command ship was different this time. It was no longer the tense quiet before a fight. Instead, it felt like the calm after a storm, a stillness filled with memories and hopes. John Harris stood at the observation window, gazing at the stars beyond, thinking about everything they had survived. The scars on his arms itched softly, a reminder of pain, but also of strength. The 6 silent seals moved quietly behind him, their presence steady and sure. They had fought countless battles together, seen horrors no one should face, and now they stood ready for whatever came next. They had been through darkness and pain, but they were brothers bound by trust, scars, and purpose. John turned away from the window and looked at his team. We fought hard, he said softly. We lost much, but we also saved hope. Earth is safe for now, Marcus nodded. But the galaxy is still dangerous. We can't let our guard down. Our work has just begun. John felt the weight of those words. The battles had changed him, not just his body, but his heart and mind. He had seen the best and worst of humanity, the pain of betrayal, and the power of loyalty. The scars on his skin were stories of survival, but his soul carried deeper marks. The ship approached Earth. A wave of emotions swept over John. He thought of the people who waited for heroes' families, friends, strangers who had no idea of the sacrifices made for their safety. He thought of the quiet nights filled with fear, and the loud moments of battle. And he thought of the silent seals, who fought not for glory but for something greater. The ship landed gently at the Earth command station, greeted by cheers and applause. John and his team stepped onto solid ground, the sunlight warm on their faces. Reporters crowded around, eager to hear the story of the veteran and his silent guardians. But John looked past the noise, focusing on the future. This is not the end, he said. It's a new beginning. We must stay strong and united. Days passed, and John settled back into a world that seemed both familiar and strange. The scars on his arms sometimes burned with old memories, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him he was alive and ready. He spent time training new recruits, sharing lessons from the battlefield, and preparing the next generation to defend Earth. The silent seals remained close, their bond unbroken. They continued their work in shadows, guarding against threats no one else saw. John knew their fight was far from over, but he felt a deep sense of peace knowing they were ready. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of colors, John sat quietly, looking at a faded photograph of his old team. He smiled sadly, remembering those who had fallen and those who had survived. The scars told his story, but his heart told a greater one, a story of hope, courage, and unbreakable spirit. Suddenly, a message arrived on his device. It was from Marcus. New intelligence on an unknown threat. We need you. John took a deep breath and stood. The galaxy was vast, and the darkness was never far. But he was ready. He looked out the window at the stars once more. Let's go, he said quietly. The silent seals gathered around, their faces set with determination. Together, they stepped into the next chapter facing the unknown, carrying the scars of the past and the hope of the future. The war had changed them all, but it had also made them stronger. Together, they would protect Earth and the stars beyond. A new beginning had come, and they would meet it as one.